Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, in Brussels tonight, Theresa May, at her first EU summit as Prime Minister, is addressing the 27 other EU leaders after dinner on the subject of the UK's departure from the European Union. They apparently have been instructed to listen but stay stum. The body language on both sides tonight will no doubt be cordial, but the devil will be in the detail. And Katia Adler, the BBC's Europe editor, is in Brussels at the summit tonight. What has been the reception for Theresa May tonight, Katia?
Well, of course, this is her first EU summit as Britain's Prime Minister, and after the Brexit vote, you could have thought that it would be a frosty reception. But of course, all 28 EU leaders here are seasoned politicians. You can call it duplicity or being damn good diplomats, but they are perfectly capable of picking holes in each other's politics and being perfectly polite with one another. But behind those smiles, and if you listen to the EU leaders as they arrived at this summit, there's a noticeable hardening in tone. Just listen to François Hollande of France. He said, if Theresa May wants a hard Brexit, we'll give her hard negotiations. Even amongst traditional allies like Germany, the Netherlands or Italy, there is a hardening of tone. One thing we have to be careful about, of course, is expecting things to happen too quickly, because although Brexit is one of the most dramatic developments in post-war Europe, this is about a process and not a single event. And in the meantime, we're in a kind of a holding pattern of screaming silences. Theresa May refuses to tell EU leaders the precise details of the Brexit she wants, and they refuse to talk trade deals with her until the formal Brexit proceedings have started. That could have led to terrible tensions over dinner tonight, but instead, all the leaders, including Theresa May, talked about Russia and Syria. The Prime Minister insisted tonight that the UK remains a full EU member until it leaves. She demanded that the UK not be cut out of common decision-making in the meantime. So yes, the British people have voted to leave the EU. Theresa May says leave the EU they will. But we are an infinite number of meetings and decision-makings away from the time when the UK actually walks out the door.
Katia, thank you very much indeed. Well, one of the big issues to deal with in the Brexit negotiations is, of course, freedom of movement. And Newsnight has learned that there's been a pushback after hostile briefings against the Chancellor in Whitehall, and that those advocating a softer Brexit are saying the door should be kept open to much wider to lower-skilled migrants from the EU to avoid damaging the economy. Our political editor, Nick Watt, is here. Nick, what have you underheard?
Well, I've learnt tonight that Theresa May is being urged by senior figures in Whitehall to wait to the very last minute before she triggers Article 50. That will bring those Brexit negotiations. So those EU leaders, they've got to wait till the end of March. That's her self-imposed deadline. And the reason why they're making this case is that Britain needs every minute to get its ducks in a row. And boy, it is a work in progress. You were talking there about those hostile briefings against Philip Hammond after he urged caution on migration controls. I understand the Prime Minister deeply unamused by those briefings against her Chancellor. Now, there was talk at the time of those briefings of imposing work permits on EU migrants designed to keep the door open to highly skilled workers but make it more difficult for lower skilled workers. What I understand is there's a real concern that if you close the door too much on those lower skilled workers, bad for the economy, but also you'd undermine key areas like the care sector. So this is my film. Ring a bell?
What we think should happen is an Australian-style points-based system, so we get the people we need for the NHS and indeed all our other businesses and services.
Yes, it was one of the defining issues in the referendum campaign. Britain would take back control of its borders and definitively bring down immigration. But it didn't take long for Theresa May to say no to that proposal.
What the British people voted for on the 23rd of June was to bring some control into the movement of people from the European Union into the UK. A points-based system does not give you that control.
Thank you very much for coming together today. It's our first...
Since then, immigration has unsurprisingly emerged as one of the most contentious issues as ministers try to thrash out an agreed UK negotiating position. The Chancellor, Philip Hammond, has found himself under fire from Leave supporters after he urged caution at a meeting of the Cabinet's Brexit Committee over plans to restrict unskilled workers from the EU. Newsnight understands that Theresa May was deeply irritated that a misleading account of a discussion behind closed doors was leaked in a deliberate bid to damage the Chancellor. The discussions in Whitehall are described as fluid. Advocates of a hard Brexit are pressing for a system of work permits designed to keep the door open to skilled migrants and narrow opportunities for unskilled workers. Where there is a strong economic need, the Polish builder is an obvious example, work permits would also be issued for less skilled workers. Those advocating a softer Brexit are saying that the door should be kept open much wider to lower skilled workers or risk undermining, for example, the care sector. One idea is to set a base level for a migrant salary. One Remain supporter warns Britain will have to tread carefully.
I think what's quite clear is that we can't have our cake and eat it. We can't have complete control over who comes here and at the same time have full membership of the single market. Is there some sort of possible compromise where we have limited but not full controls over who comes here and at the same time limited but not full membership of the single market? Well, that's certainly possible in theory. Whether it's negotiable in practice will be very difficult, both legally and even more so politically.
A former cabinet minister on the Leave side says Britain should make up its own mind.
Immigration rules should not be a matter for negotiation with the rest of the EU. The point of getting back control over our laws and our borders was that we make those decisions. No other country ever asks us what rules they should apply about access to their country for work or travel. We should apply the same rules to people coming from Europe as we do to people coming from other friendly countries. The present system has a whiff of racialism about it, that people coming from our former colonial territories are severely controlled. Those who are coming from largely white European countries are not. The same rules should apply to everybody.
Theresa May faces a long and winding road before she formally launches those Brexit negotiations with the rest of the EU, possibly at the last minute at the end of March. The Whitehall skirmishes have just begun.
Nick, well, earlier today I got a European view on freedom of movement and other things when I spoke to the German Deputy Finance Minister Jens Spahn to talk about his ambitions for Brexit discussions. I started by asking whether the UK could do perfectly well outside the Union, given the projections of some of the strongest economic growth in the EU.
This uncertainty stops investments. It does definitely not bring more growth, but less growth. And so I think it is important for all of us that we just start the process and that we get an idea where it might end. And secondly, we might underestimate, just let me say this, I think we underestimate the long-term results of this Brexit. Of course, we can argue about what's happening on the share markets today, tomorrow, next week, but the long-term relationship, the long-term situation of Britain as well as the European Union will change, and that will affect the economy more in a different way, much more than we see it today.
But I wonder actually if there is a possibility that we could have EU nationals coming to the UK to work if they have work visas, if they secure jobs, so it's free movement of labour with work visas, in return for access to the single market. Is it not possible that these work visas might be a way of negotiating?
Well, between no relations and the internal market, there are many, many options in between. So I'm quite sure we can find something about what is a strong trade, a strong economic agreement, and something that is about movement and the question of working in Britain or the other way around in continental Europe for British people as well. But if it is really an internal market as it is now, as it is in the European Union, then you have to accept the freedom of movement. As I said, that's one of the counter pillars actually of the European Union. That's one of the most important added value that the European Union has to offer to its average citizens, and so we actually can't compromise in that one.
Is it possible that we could make financial contributions as we do now, and that in return we might get access, well, we would actually might be able to continue passporting, for example, that it is possible that there'll be sectoral access in return for British contributions?
Well, it depends on the package. But to be very honest, I don't see the point in paying contributions, paying money to EU budget that you don't have any control over anymore. What actually is the improvement compared to the situation today, where you're paying money and have control over it at the same time and discussing what is happening with the money in Brussels. So actually I don't see the point, but if that is something Great Britain wants, that can be part of a package. When it comes to passporting for the financial institutions, that is something that has to be negotiated as well, but I can say something very clear. If you want to have passporting, you need to accept, at least basically, the EU regulation that we have in the financial area. You can't become a kind of financial heaven of what some people, as far as I hear it, are dreaming of in the UK and in other countries. Some banks are dreaming of it.
Now, a very senior figure in Germany, he's a representative of the German auto industry, Matthias Fisman, said that the UK is an important market. The UK is a very important market. But actually, cohesion of the EU 27 countries is more important for this industry. That's a very interesting thing for him to say, because he seems to be saying that even if it meant some job losses, it's actually more important to have cohesion. The very ideal of Europe, a European Union, is more important. What do you think of that?
Matthias Wismann is right. Of course we want to keep this market. Of course we want to have access to this market as open as possible, but not at any cost, not for any price. So it depends on the conditions. As I just said, the internal market, really free access means that you have to accept the freedom of movement. And if that is a condition that is not met, that is not wanted, then we have to accept that the access we have today, for example, to the car market of the UK, might change, and that we have to find a new settlement about it.
Do you think that if we did decide when we looked at the deal that we didn't like it, is there a way that we could get back, and actually would there be the goodwill to take us back, do you think?
I don't know what happens in the next years. We have to see the process now. We have to negotiate. I expect that this referendum counts. But if there should be a new situation in 2 years' time, in 4 years' time, I don't know how long it takes, of course we would re-debate it.